Welcome to the Disruptive Social Care Podcast with social care provocateur and social media queen Shirley Ayres and myself, Stuart Arnott, founder of Mindings, a service dedicated to bringing social media to the disconnected. In this fortnightly show, we aim to spread the word about what's going on in the world of disruptive social care, amplify the voices of people with great ideas that few people ever hear about, and to help our communities connect and collaborate. Joining us in the studio this week is our special guest, Martyn Sibley.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Excellent. Well, Shirley, hello. Show number 4.
Indeed.
And despite the busy public transport and Olympic traffic lanes, we managed to make it to the studio. Are you loving it?
Oh, I'm loving the Olympics, and I have to say, I thought that the opening ceremony was very, very typically British, eccentric, quirky, and absolutely stunning. I've been following all the comments on Twitter about it, but I think I felt very proud to be British on the opening ceremony. Yes.
Me too. I'm not somebody who described himself as overly patriotic, but my wife and I were crying our eyes out. We loved it. And I'm loving watching the Olympics. I'm loving watching the swimming and the gymnasts because there's some fantastic, I have a 4-year-old daughter, as you know, some fantastic inspirational people for particularly for my daughter. And I think that's great. I hope that's going to be the legacy of the Games.
Yes, me too. And I must say, kudos to Channel 4 for their stunning advert for the Paralympics Meet the Superhumans. You know, like many people, I got involved in watching the Olympic torch relay, which actually passed by the end of my road, and I got to see the torch kiss. Wow. I have to say, such a clever marketing and engagement strategy to promote the Olympic Games, even for a cynic like me.
And the torch passed down at the foot of our road as well. I loved that. Interestingly, so you mentioned the Channel 4 Paralympics trailer. 3 years ago, Jimmy Carr, that famous tax avoider, got in trouble for joking that injuries sustained by service personnel in Iraq and Afghanistan would create a great GB Paralympics team in the future. Now, some saw that as very insensitive, and Carr actually subsequently apologised, saying he meant no malice. But it's turned out to be true. There are many service personnel who are in the Paralympics team. And I only mention that because Channel 4 promo actually draws attention to how some of the athletes came about their disabilities, and it features what's clearly a battlefield explosion. So I just thought it was an interesting aspect that they brought. But absolutely some really inspiring there, and I really look forward to going to the Paralympic Games, to the events, and again to take my daughter to see some real heroes in action.
Oh, I agree. And they're saying, you know, this is the first social media Olympics, and the sort of real-time photographs, information that you're getting from people, I think is quite remarkable.
I just hope the mobile networks manage to keep up with it.
Yes, but I do find it a bit strange that they've blamed the coverage or the lack of coverage from the road race on Saturday on people's use of Twitter. That's not how I understand it, to be honest. But you know, technical issues, interesting. and I think, you know, on a separate note, talking about Twitter, I've concluded that people really like Twitter lists, because one of the most popular retweets for me this week were the 10 reasons why doctors should use Twitter, from the excellent Anne Cunningham. And in fact, it's relevant for all professions. And just to sort of, you know, the 10 reasons: connect, engage, inform, share, reflect, be challenged, be supported, lead, learn, and inspire. That's the power of social media. That's
something to laminate and stick on my office wall, I think. So, Shirley, what's been happening this week in the world of social care?
Well, last time I suggested that things were going to go quiet for the summer, but in fact this has not proved to be the case. And last week I attended the Alliance for Useful Evidence summer networking event, which was organised by Nesta. Now, the Alliance champions the use of and demand for evidence that is rigorous, accessible and appropriate, and it's developing a collective voice to advocate for decision makers to generate and use more rigorous evidence, and to encourage collaboration and knowledge sharing across the Alliance. And as you know, I have a particular concern about all the research that is being generated that does not seem to be influencing government policy. And for some lovely quotes from Jeff Mulgan, who's the CEO of Nesta: "There is now a moral imperative to understand your impact. We cannot justify ignoring evidence anymore," which I think is absolutely right. And David Willits, Minister for Higher Education, stating, "We have incredibly sophisticated research by academics, but the policy analysis that goes with it is often naive and simplistic." I think this is something academics have really got to take seriously. I read the new Demos Aging Sociably report, which explores how businesses can do more to tackle loneliness in older age, which we highlighted in the last podcast as being quite a serious issue. And the conclusion is that older people urgently need new local hubs to meet people and build their social networks. And so I'm thinking about all of the local hubs that already exist, such as libraries, post offices, pubs, Wetherspoons, schools, colleges, and how we have to be so careful to build on resources rather than duplicate what is already there. And I do think we really need to map what is already available in communities. As Paul Burstow, Minister for Care, said, loneliness should be on a business's corporate social responsibility agenda, and ageing sociably poses a challenge for us all. Loneliness is not just the government's responsibility, but it belongs to all of society. So there's a big challenge.
Absolutely.
And the report suggests the need for companies to support local social hubs, and they cite some interesting examples, which includes a sort of Sainsbury's cafe. Now, I agree with the sentiments expressed in this report, but I'm really interested to know if there is an action plan to implement the recommendations, because I think one of the problems for a lot of these reports is that they have conclusions, they have recommendations, and then nothing seems to happen.
It's a good moment for people like Sainsbury's to seize the moment.
Absolutely. Well, any sort of, local businesses sort of thinking, how can we accommodate this huge demographic of older people who need social hubs? So, challenge for us all, I think. And I think one of the other interesting discussions that continues on social media is about leadership, about the cultural shift required, about transparency, and about openness. And an interesting IBM study that says if you don't have a social chief exec, you're going to be less competitive. And if we want organisations that are adaptive and agile, we need to be able to use social technologies. So, there's becoming a bit of a divide, really, between organisations that are comfortable using digital technology and social networks, and other organisations, sadly quite a lot in social care, who still haven't understood the power of social media to connect with all of their stakeholders.
I think lots of big organisations and corporations, private companies are working at ways of doing that, but I think it's when you get to the governmental, local government level, etc., they haven't a clue.
Well, having said that, I mean, another interesting report from Paul Bromford talks about over 50% of IT directors ban access to social media at work. And I was actually having a conversation on Twitter this morning about, for me, a very strange notion that, for example, a lot of councils use social media to promote their services, but they don't actually allow their staff to use social media to communicate with citizens and people who would like to have different conversations.
Well, that's people using it as broadcasting instead of a conversation.
Yes, absolutely. So, I think it's an interesting question whether how organisations are using social media. Is this becoming a benchmark of openness and transparency? So, I think this is one that a debate that will go on and on. And, along with how do we encourage the public sector to be more innovative, to be more agile, and to shake out of being complacent and offering mediocre services that so many people are not impressed with. So this is a discussion that will go on and on. And I'd also like to mention the proposed Skills for Care merger with the National Skills Academy for Social Care, because I think many people are confused about the role and purpose of many of the social care organisations. And if we can streamline them so that people are very clear, these are the organisations that are responsible for workforce development, it will be very helpful for people who really don't understand how social care structures work. And I'd like to mention the excellent blog, which is exploring aspects of the Caring White Paper, written by the voluntary organisation's Disability Group. And sound words from Bill Mumford, their chair, the Care White Paper and Workforce. People experience our behaviours, not our values.
That's excellent. I read that just the other night, and we'll put links for that onto the show notes.
Indeed. So, and one final observation. An engaged employee is a source of enduring competitive advantage. And I think there are serious lessons for UK care in there. I'm just thinking about the Undercover Boss series last night, which featured the boss of a care home who went to see what needed to change, and how important it is that staff are engaged, they feel valued, and that their role is recognised. So, and if you haven't watched it, it's definitely worth watching.
Absolutely, and so we'll to catch that on iPlayer if you missed it. I wanted to mention a story I read on BBC Online about a call for a national system for monitoring vital signs in hospitals. This was an eye-opener. The way vital signs such as blood pressure and temperature are monitored in hospitals need to be standardised across the NHS, experts say. Currently, over 100 different models are used, causing confusion and sometimes delays in patients getting help. Now, I'm all for disruptive social care, but in this instance, I'm all for standardisation. 100 different models. Is each individual hospital just making up their own system?
And it's a question to ask, actually, people in the health service, because the cost of 100 different models must be substantial. And when they're looking at making billions of pounds worth of savings, how can they streamline services? I'm
just concerned about a member of staff transferring from one hospital to the next, and the system they're using is just ever so slightly different. That's kind of scary. I actually had some experience of that with Mindings, because we were talking to a company about connecting a blood pressure measuring system onto a Mindings device. And so I started doing some research about how would we present that data. I just assumed there would be some, system that had a name that you just used, and it wasn't. It was just random. I came across loads of them. We ended up just making up our own one. I thought, well, that's helpful. That's 101 different models that there are now.
Information governance is quite a complicated and challenging issue, because when people talk about integrating systems across health and social care, the fact is they work to very different criteria. And I think it would be quite interesting to get someone along at some stage to explain that actually information governance is a fascinating subject.
Absolutely. Actually, I know somebody who's involved in that, and he's saying that the ownership of that data should be the patient.
Yes.
And that takes away all sorts of kind of security issues, that the information is owned by the patient and they can transfer it and let anyone see it who needs it.
Yeah, and it's happening. There are some pilots happening. It's quite interesting. But by default, really, rather than as a sort of very proactive stance from the Department of Health.
Okay, excellent.
So, just update me. What's happening with Mindings? It's been launched. What's the next stage?
Well, we are up for anyone else using it. I've actually brought it along today. We've got a little plug-in. Anybody who's watching it on YouTube can see it running here on our desk. And so if you want to come along to mindings.com, you get a free month's trial. We're very keen to get some feedback. We're already getting some great feedback from people who are using it. A couple of people in particular who are using it with members of family who have Alzheimer's, who have been giving us some great feedback, and we've actually been modifying some aspects of the service to make it work even better specifically for them. So come along to mindings.com, check out what we're doing, get a free month's trial, give us some feedback. And
I'm glad you've brought it into the studio, because I've had a few requests. People actually said we'd like to see it in action. So we are responding to users' requests. There it is on the desk. There's some nice photographs popping up there. Come onto their YouTube show and watch it. And Our guest in the studio this week is Martyn Sibley. Martyn describes himself as a regular guy who happens to have a disability, which means he can't walk, lift anything heavier than a book, or shower by himself. He has a master's degree, has travelled the world as far as Australia, drives his own car, runs his own business, and lives independently in London. Martyn's a blogger, a social entrepreneur and disability advocate, and his aim in life is to inspire, inform and change the world around disability issues. Martyn co-founded the disability lifestyle magazine Disability Horizons, and he's created disability webinars, disability e-courses and disability e-conferences. I wish I had your energy.
I know, I feel tired listening to that.
He works as a consultant on social media, new media, marketing and disability awareness. Martyn, so what inspired you to become an entrepreneur?
I don't know. I think that's probably the vehicle by which to deliver the passion I've got around provision for disabled people. And I think that provision is around being online as a new tool, and also a much more kind of positive can-do message for especially younger disabled people that are growing up and can be faced with so much sort of negative media coverage on occasions around disability. So I think that's more the passion and the vision, and the entrepreneurial side is I enjoy it, but it's also the area that is a must to make everything else sustainable.
So what kind of infrastructure do you have? What kind of resources and tools and stuff do you have to enable you to do all this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is the passion. I think that's the driver. But in terms of more tangible tools, everything began when I started my own blog about 3 years ago. I was working for the disability charity Scope in fundraising, and I went to the Institute of Fundraising National Convention, where a couple from New York who were very up and coming in the States around web design development, but more social media strategy, were giving a talk on some of the other not-for-profit, charities they'd supported. And I just kind of approached them at the end and said, look, I've got these ideas and thoughts banging around my head, and I want to just share them with people and just connect with people. And I think the things you've talked about today could help me do that. And from that point, I guess a business arrangement, but actually they've done everything pro bono for me. But a friendship has formed out of that, and we are best friends, and we often catch up socially. But they've provided me with the web tools and some of the strategy that has then enabled me to essentially build a community of like-minded, not just disabled people, but people interested in disability. And then off the back of that, launch all of the projects that even I was surprised to hear how many there were. But yeah, so that's kind of that's the sort of backstory, I guess, of how I've ended up here.
Excellent. We do our research, don't we?
Oh, yes.
Can you tell us more about the Disability e-conference? I see the first topic is disability and the internet.
Yeah, so I've been, as you mentioned, running the webinars monthly for around a year now, and that's been on lots of different topics. And also with Disability Horizons, we have lots of different topics for articles, and that's from employment through to travel, and relationships has been, I guess, a taboo for a lot of people. So to be able to cover that topic area has been good. But when I decided to use this format of an e-conference, which is going to be out in the next couple of weeks, but to explain how that kind of looks in reality, is it's lots of people recording short audio posts with a picture and a bio. And then obviously I was trying to create that overarching topic for the conference that would bring this group of people together. And I think, rather than going down one specific route of employment or travel, it was the internet has just enabled so many disabled people to do things that they couldn't have done before, whether it's planning and research or connecting with other people or, across the board. There's so much opportunity and so many tools online that specifically help disabled people. I wanted to be able to give a platform to share that whole agenda.
This is the Disruptive Social Care Podcast. So we came up with that term, and it's caused us quite a bit of discussion. How would you define disruption, and what do you think that disruptive technology can contribute to social care?
Yeah, because I think, interestingly, where I've come from, it's not disruptive. I've, very much through school, I've grown up with the internet, and all of the Facebook and Twitter's all just become a very natural progression for, I'm 28 at the moment, so someone of my age, I think it's not disruptive. I think, the realisation of how this is disruptive in social care was when I started to go out on my own, when I left Scope and start my own social enterprise, and tried to talk to other councils and charities about these tools that I knew would support and empower disabled people, such as the webinars and the e-course we discussed earlier. And people just looked kind of blankly at me, and almost like I was a little bit crazy to want to provide information in this new fandangled way. So I guess in the long run, disruption is just change. It's just questioning the status quo and looking for new innovative solutions. And they don't have to be complicated or complex. But I think the disruption is that people get very used to something and that becomes their norm, and they don't want to change the norm. And every now and then you need mavericks and new people to come along and shake things up. And I guess that's disruption overall.
You provide some great messages for disabled people. Follow your dreams, be aspirational, identify the barriers relevant to you, your impairment, never let your disability stop you, and always enjoy life. If external factors and barriers override this, let's find a new way around them. Would you like to share an example from your personal experience?
Yeah, I think one would probably be when I went to Australia. It was between my bachelor's and my master's years at uni. I was lucky that growing up, the family were able to go occasionally on a holiday abroad, and were able to do all of the logistical, sometimes nightmares, that come up with travelling with a disability or impairment such as my own. So this was the first trip abroad independently, and rather than just nip to France or, Bournemouth for a weekend, I did decide to go to the other side of the world. Obviously saved up for quite a long time to fund it. Had to look into all sorts of things around how to get the wheelchair on the aeroplane, how to bring 2 personal assistants, because it was going to be around a month long, and I knew that one personal assistant wouldn't be able to work constantly with the needs that I have for that whole month. So that involved speaking to my social worker about a little bit of extra funding that would enable them to join me on this trip of a lifetime. Looking at accessible taxis and accessible hotels, hiring hoists because I have to be transferred with a hoist. So yeah, it was a pretty complex project, but I think everything you've just read out is very much that is the approach I took. But I think the other part to say is I wasn't using that from a textbook or considering those as I did it. That's just how I went about life, and very much supported by friends and family to do that over many years before. And I think having started blogging and reflecting on personal achievements, these are the broad areas I think that have come to my mind that have enabled me to do that. And I'd add on top of that, since I've been blogging and very much in the Twitter sphere, that I've learnt a lot, in terms of other people have different impairments, different barriers, different backgrounds. And so it's never a one size fits all. But I still truly believe that mindset is so important, and then to have the knowledge of how to bring those resources in from different angles are also so vital as well. So I think broadly it's a tried and tested way that does work, but there'll always be, caveats and anomalies along the way.
My background's in production, working in television and commercials and corporate, etc. So I'm obsessed with logistics. So just hearing you describe the logistics of what you just did to get to Australia is hugely impressive. It kind of frankly makes you sound like the most able person that I know. Without the right supports, accessible buildings, inclusive infrastructure, educated attitudes and open organisational practices, disabled people are marginalised. I mean, even today we had some difficulties negotiating the way into the studio, and they've done their best here to make it disabled access, but it was still a bit of a challenge. Whether legally, socially, politically or economically, the case for inclusivity is clear. What do you think is the biggest challenge in making social care services fit for a digitally connected world?
Oh, that's a big one.
I ask the big questions.
I think the main thing around why social care can benefit from digital tools is it's all about engagement. And I think by engaging, you are including. I mean, I think that the areas, when you talk about social model and sort of overarching political inclusion, that the comments we were just discussing, I guess more was coming from a sort of non-disabled general public audience. You'd hope to think that most social services and local authorities would be totally within the understanding of the social model, reducing barriers. So I think for their side it's a communication exercise about really engaging with service users to understand what the daily challenges are, what they want, what they need, and to have a two-way discussion to basically help find new solutions and progress forwards.
So you're starting in a new adventure in September.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm exhausted just thinking about it. When you'll be travelling across Europe with your adapted hand-controlled car, accessible caravan and personal care assistance, what are you most looking forward to on your, frankly, epic European disability road trip?
I think the adventure and exploring new places. I think that, when people sometimes read my blog or come across articles I've done, and it can start at the moment because of the things I've done in the last year have been let's be honest, a little bit out there. I'm still pinching myself. We were chatting earlier, weren't we, Shirley, that I had been to Spain for 2 months as a volunteer, and as we touched upon the logistics of Australia, you can imagine what that entailed. So, you know, there's a danger that as much as I want and am the everyday disabled person who blogs, these things can start to give a potential disconnect from someone that is just struggling to get a social care budget to be able to get out, do the shopping, to go to work. So, but I hope what the message of the road trip and the things I get up to are that everything is actually possible. And I'd like to say that this hasn't come about in a month or 2 months. You know, this is a lifetime of me working things out for myself, working out, you know, going through 5 years of a career in a disability charity to, you know, do training. And so everything kind of has come from different angles. And at the moment, I'm pleased to say the dots are joined together very nicely, and I'm able to do something as this road trip. But yeah, certainly from a personal element, it will be meeting new people, seeing new places. But there's a lot of media interest already in this, and I think the plans to interview a lot of other disabled people on the journey to really, through my eyes and their eyes, tell a story of being disabled in Europe in 2012. And I think to just document something like that just will have knock-on consequences. You know, it will get people to think, and it will change stereotypes.
Excellent. So what's the URL for this?
Most of the blogs will be coming through my personal blog, which is martynsibley.com, and on Disability Horizons, I'm sure we'll do sort of some updates as well.
Okay. Well, we started off talking about the Olympics. What do you think of the Olympics so far? Are you watching them? Have you been to see anything?
Yeah, I'm not a cynical person, I have to say, with the Olympics. I was just worried about, you know, the traffic in London, and I was sort of, you know, I'm not so worried about these sports. You know, I'm a football fan, so I might watch a bit of the football. And then the opening ceremony came on. I was having a quiet night, and wow, it was just fantastic to watch the opening ceremony. And ever since, I've been watching a lot more of the sports than I actually thought I would. I've been gripped by it, to be honest.
Yeah, me too.
I love the inclusivity of the opening ceremony as well.
Absolutely.
Which is a thing that seems to have wound some people up. Politically correct nonsense, I've heard people describing it as. I want to slap people who say that.
But you know, the other interesting thing, I mean, they had 15,000 volunteers. So when the government and people are saying, oh, it's so difficult to get people to volunteer for anything, they didn't have a problem. You know, that was hundreds of thousands of hours that people devoted to being there, being part of it. And I think the other, apart from the inclusivity, the other really great thing for me was people were enjoying it. You know, it was ordinary people. It wasn't sort of slick, manufactured, perfect specimens of humankind.
It wasn't busloads of extras that had been brought in. It was real nurses.
Yes. You know, it was all of us there on the screen, and the drummers. Wow,
it was amazing.
They drummed for hours.
The energy.
And when the torch was brought in, they lined up 500 of the people who had built the Olympic part as well. I loved all that stuff. That was great. Yeah. Anyway, so obviously coming up after the Olympics is the Paralympic Games. What do you think about the separation of these two? And do you think there should be more of an integration?
Yeah, we are interesting on Disability Horizons. We threw this out on the Twitter sphere for everyone else to get involved, and there was a lot of different kind of, you know, thoughts and messages coming back. I mean, I think when you look at we talked about marginalisation of disabled people. So I think if you're starting from a point of being behind, in inverted commas, you know, in a social progress way, then sometimes the only way to really highlight something is to go the opposite side and then really showcase it. So you're really grabbing the public's attention. But I think deep down, it's all about inclusion and becoming everyday normality of life. And so I think that the utopia really would be that you would still have the Paralympic events and the different levels of competition with impairments. But I believe that should be run in parallel with the Olympics. And whilst that might detract some of the overall big media attention that sometimes is necessary, I think you'd still get good messages across, but in the world of inclusion.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Martyn, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I hope you can hang about for the rest of the programme. We'll get you to chip in.
Cool. Sounds good. Thank you very much.
This section of the show is called Follow Friday because it's Friday. Well, as I say every week, it's not actually Friday, it's Tuesday, but the show goes out on Friday. But what we do in this part of the show is give you some tips of people who you can follow on Twitter using #FF. Oh, so we're going to do that this week. But Shirley, first of all, you have something new to introduce us to.
Yes, I'd like to talk about Twitter chats because they're booming and they provide a really interesting snapshot of the issues and challenges that confront social care. And I think that Twitter has some of the liveliest social and political commentary of the day and some great public conversations. Now, Twitter chats are fast-paced, live, real-time chats that normally take place weekly on Twitter on particular days of the week and last about an hour. And if you're not familiar with Twitter chats, there's a very useful introduction from Social Media Examiner, 5 steps to hosting successful Twitter chats.
Very good website.
Yeah, it is. Worth looking at. Lots of really good information and resources. And I'd just like to mention some social care-related Twitter chats. We've got DPULO, which is short for Disabled People's User-Led Organisations, which takes place on a Tuesday, 8 o'clock, and is an opportunity for people who work or are interested in disabled people's user-led organisations to share learning and knowledge about development and issues. We have the Social Work, Social Care and Media Network, which hosts debates about social work practice, issues and research, which is held on Tuesdays at 8 o'clock. Local Government Social Media, which discusses the use of social media and digital technologies in local government, takes place. There's a lot that take place on Tuesdays, I have to say. It's very busy. At 8:30. On Wednesdays, one of the original ones that I introduced me to Twitter chats is the NHSSM, which encourages the National Health Service to talk about social media and how it can benefit patients, which is on Wednesdays at 8 o'clock. And a very international one that is worthwhile everybody joining in, called Social Work Chat. So it gathers people from all corners of the globe to discuss topics around the social workplace. So if you have a passion for social media, social technologies, interested in increasing efficiency, the discussions are always very, very lively, and there are lots of good resources that are shared. That takes place on Thursdays at 9 o'clock.
What particular tools do you prefer to use?
To follow conversations, I use TweetChat. Very easy, very straightforward, and because it puts the hashtag in for you, you're not. One of the problems sometimes when people are involved in Twitter chats is that they forget the hashtag, and if you have got someone who's then collating all the discussions afterwards, it's very useful to have a hashtag to make sure you've covered all aspects of the Twitter chat. So get involved is my advice. I wrote a post about it on my website a few months ago, and I've been inspired by this to actually update it. So we'll put a link to my website. Twitter chats are booming. And coming on to the Follow Fridays, firstly I'd like to recommend Blind Veterans, which was formerly St Dunstan's News. Now this is a national charity which supports blind ex-service men and women, and they have the most amazing services, up-to-the-minute information, advice and support about the latest technology which can help ex-service people live more independent lives. Their knowledge of technology and how it helps people live independently is so impressive. I'd also like to recommend Comms 2.0, which is an excellent resource for communicators in public, private, third sector and higher education, comms and PR. They have some really useful resources there. And at Paul Bromford for his insightful commentaries about the need for cultural mind shifts to encourage leaders to embrace and not fear the use of social media in their organisations. And finally, because, I cover quite a lot, I have many diverse interests, as we know, Stu. I'd recommend the LSE Impact Blog, which is a forum provided by the London School of Economics Impact of Social Sciences project for those interested in increasing the impact of social sciences on government policy, society and business. And they have a particular interest in exploring how academics can make their research more accessible through the use of social media. And finally, I'd like to mention Russell Webster, who tweets as RustWebT, which provides an excellent probation, payment by results and crime-related blog. He tweets about probation, social media, criminal justice, and he's been hosting the Great Why Tweet series with some pretty diverse guest posts.
I had a look at that last night. It's brilliant. Even if you think this is not something that would, is particularly within your sphere, it's a really good read.
It is, yes.
Well, I was looking at the website of stairliftrecycling.com this week. My dad, having benefited from a recycle stair lift when the local council said he was entitled to one but couldn't give him one because the budget had run out. They're supporters of the Respite for Carers Fund, which is a great charity raising money to give short-term respite to carers. They are at Respite for Carer. Shirley, did you know that the economic value of the contribution carers make in the UK has been calculated to be £119 billion per year? That's equivalent to 18,500 for every carer in the UK. That blew me away.
Yes. I mean, you know, the numbers of people providing informal care is quite phenomenal. And I think it's good that the Caring for Our Future white paper mentions specific support for carers, because I think it is a really, really big issue.
Yeah. Well, check out Respite for Carer, because they do some really good work giving just short breaks, some, help to carers. It's very important.
I'd also mention Chill For Us Carers, small charity based in Norfolk, and they provide free laptops for carers. And they do a marvellous job once again. Wendy, who runs Chill For Us Carers, gave me one of my best quotes ever, which is, the internet provides a window on the world.
That's great. Well, we'll be putting all these links on the website to check out.
Martyn, do you have any Follow Friday recommendations for us?
Yes, I've got two. The first one is a good friend of mine called Paul Carter, who used to work for Disability Now works in a quite small TV production company, very much working around changing stereotypes and the sort of participation of disabled people in the media. And as part of that agenda, really, he gave me a bit of an opportunity last year to work as a TV presenter for BBC London, which was really, really cool experience, as you can imagine.
Yes.
So he is at Junior C0. That's Paul Carter. And the second one, as we sort of discussed earlier in my interview, a lot of what I'm now doing, I guess, falls more within a lifestyle part of for disabled people to follow. But coming from a disability charity, is still very much a campaigning side burning within me. So I just want to give out a big shout out to Kalia Franklin, who is at Bendy Girl, and she's doing some fantastic stuff for the people that are really being hit hard by some of the changes in policy. So they're my two Follow Fridays.
Excellent.
And
Thank you very much.
Definitely gets the prize for the best Twitter handle of the week.
Yes.
Well, we'll put these details and other information about things we've been talking about on the show notes on the website, which again is disruptivesocialcare.com, and our Facebook page at facebook.com/disruptivesocialcare. And you can follow me at Minding Stew.
And you can follow me at Shirley Ayres.
And if you do tweet about the show, and please do, and tell your communities about us, remember to use the hashtag DEUKCare. So Shirley, what do we have coming up in the next couple of weeks?
Well, did you know, Stu, that the Social Care Institute for Excellence recently identified over 30 websites dedicated to various listings and information on social care providers?
That doesn't surprise me.
No, it doesn't me either, I have to say. Now, some of the news sites, such as the Good Care Guide and Sky's soon-to-be-launched Find Me Good Care, enable service users and their carers to post feedback on care homes. But there's been an interesting comment from Patient Opinion, a provider of ratings on healthcare, who've recently been awarded $160,000 to develop a TripAdvisor-type site for social care. There is a major problem protecting the identity of residents in care homes, because most care homes tend to be quite small and they have far fewer residents than, for example, hotels have guests. So it could be easy for staff to figure out who posted negative reviews of a care home. So that is something that we have to be mindful about when talking about a TripAdvisor type site. And we're going to be interviewing Andrea Sutcliffe, Chief Executive for the Social Care Institute for Excellence, and Paul Hodgkin from Patient Opinion, who are due to launch Care Opinion in the next few months. And these will be very interesting questions to explore with them both, I think.
Absolutely. Look forward to meeting them.
And a date for your diary. Social Media Week is coming to London, 24th to the 28th of September, with the theme of empowering change through collaboration. Now, judging by the previous events I've attended, it's certainly worthwhile keeping an eye on the programme. Most events are free. Some events get booked up very, very quickly.
From previous experience, they do.
And it's a really quite, if I sort of look at the ones that I've been to previously, it's quite an eclectic range of subjects that are explored. Mm-hmm. So that's coming up in September.
So, Martyn, have you got anything coming up in the next few weeks?
So as mentioned, there's the Disability Conference coming out anytime soon, basically. And it's not in the next 2 weeks, but keep an eye on disabilityhorizons.com for our coverage on the Paralympics.
Well, that's it from us this week. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please help spread the word. Our hashtag on Twitter is DEUKCare.
And come visit us at disruptivesocialcare.com and our Facebook page, facebook.com/disruptivesocialcare. Come and leave some comments. Some people
Indeed,
have,
yes.
and it's been very useful. We really enjoy hearing from you. Martyn, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for
Indeed.
having me.
It's been lovely having you. Until next time.
Indeed.